Conscious love. There is a phrase occurring in the first epistle of John where the passage is about love, conscious love. All conscious love depends upon throwing out what is bad, then selecting only what is good. Mechanical love, on the other hand, is of a quite different order. The passage reads as follows: There is no fear in love, but perfect love casteth out fear, because fear hath punishment, and he that feareth is not made perfect in love. See John, chapter 4, verse 18. In the Gospel of John and in the epistles of John, love is emphasized, not emotional love as the conversation with Peter shows in the last chapter of the Gospel of John, but a different kind of love, which is connected with the idea of a goal, an aim, gradually perfecting. In the passage, the phrase, perfect love, really means in Greek, a love that has reached perfection, through long trial and error. John pursued the path of bhakti yoga. There are different kinds of yoga: jnana yoga, which has to do with work on intellectual center; bhakti yoga, which has to do with work on emotional center; hatha yoga, which has to do with work on the moving center, and many branches of these three different lines which belong to man number 3, man number 2, and man number 1. In the fourth way school, an individual must work first in 2 rooms, and then in 3, finally revealing a 4th room if it is open to them, because in the 4th way it is necessary for one to reach some state of balance, in which all of their centers begin to harmoniously reflect this work. Here, in the writing of John, there is evidence of the way of bhakti yoga, and an awakening of conscious love, as distinct from mechanical emotional love or physical love. The objective of the way is to get in touch with our higher emotional center, directly through love, an angelic, unconditional love, which lies at level 24, of all worlds. We cannot, of course, understand what this love is from our ordinary ideas of love, which are turned outward towards physical objects. John is speaking of another kind of love, just as the work speaks of another kind of love possible for us, that is, conscious love, as in the love of one's offspring, a pet, or a parent, no matter what. This kind of love is often very far from us, and to imagine we possess it already is the greatest foolishness. We have to realize the illusions of love, and how we ourselves cannot love, how we both love and hate, in the same breath. For this reason John says, He who hateth his brother is in darkness, and also, if a man say, I love God, and hateth his brother, he is a liar. Further, he says that whoever has not this love of which he is speaking is dead. He speaks of this love as a new birth, calling it being begotten of God, and says, Whosoever is begotten of God doeth no sin, because his seed abideth in him, and he cannot sin, because he is begotten of God. All love, he teaches, comes from the love of something higher than oneself, or even the world. He says God is love, and the only way in which love can be made perfect is to know and acknowledge the existence of some form of creation. It is in this regard that he says, Herein is love made perfect, and that in this kind of love there is no fear. That is why he further adds, If a man say, I love God, and hateth his brother, he is a liar. He speaks often of how this love conquers the world with all of its fears, cares, and anxieties. He is speaking there of something that can be awakened within us, that is stronger than anything that life has to offer. He is speaking of something that changes the signs in us and reverses them, so that what was active becomes passive, and what was passive becomes active. In this regard, recall a teaching in the work about personality and essence, how personality is active and essence passive, how one must undergo a complete reversal within themselves so that personality is rendered passive and essence active. How we are thus born anew. We are given no hint of the method or the school to which John belonged, but can see that it was a bhakti yoga school. We can also see how in the third epistle someone called Diotrephes had entered this school, and was apparently trying to teach some other method. John says that he loved preeminence, that preeminence which belongs to ordinary love, that is self-love. Everything we see in the Gospels about love is obviously not about self-love. When the disciples quarreled about preeminence, they were told that to be great in the sense of the kingdom of heaven, they must become servants. The subjective world and its psychology within us is contrasted with the kingdom of heaven and its psychology, something utterly different. When this work speaks of imaginary I, of false personality, and so on, it is seeking to begin to bring us into a different orientation, into a new psychology of ourselves which is ultimately called in the Gospels the kingdom of heaven. It is of this love that John is speaking, and not a love of the world. Of this love he says, "If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, and the lust of the eyes and the vain glory of life, is not of the Father, but of this world." John further adds, speaking of individual man, his attachments and identifyings, "The world passeth away, and the lust thereof, but he that doeth the will of God abideth forever." If we could all of us catch hold of the rope of which this work speaks, and then hold on to it, we would be better able to understand both what John means and what work means. When the valuation of this work is great, it makes us strong inside, apart from what happens in life. We no longer have to prove ourselves, to satisfy our fear, to keep up any false personality or reputation. Because we begin to obey something quite different, which in our case is the teaching of the work. This keeps something eternally young in us, because we all have within us something that can remain eternally fresh and alive. That, however, involves turning in an alternate direction for our nourishment, passing through a doorway called self-observation, beginning to find what it is that we really want, and what we can actually attain. After a time to catch glimpses of what that love means of which John speaks, and which the work calls conscious love. Because as we cease to delude ourselves and invent narratives, then so do we cease to play with and invent other people. Instead of trying to meet them and get to know them from the outside inward, we begin to feel and to know each other from the inside outward. To feel a common existence, which is without passion. Put simply, that is exactly what it is, without any further definition. When we realize this point of inner experience, we begin to understand what conscious love is, no matter how faintly. But unless we have separated ourselves from any invention, all pictures and falsities, we cannot reach this point, which is indefinable. We reach the point only through something stronger than life. If the work, if the Gospels, if all esotericism had not something stronger behind them than anything offered in day-to-day life, then we would never reach this point. We need to understand that in the reaching of this point, endless struggles are necessary, endless failures, untold confusion, pain and uncertainty, because it is we ourselves who have to win to this point, through inner choice. In ages past many have reached the point, and it is they that communicate their strength to us. Let's hope that we too may reach the point where we come to realize that a love that has become perfected casts out all fear. Certainly taking ourselves for granted, and taking ourselves as one, therefore never letting the work in to break that all up. We cannot expect to reach the point because only real I can love consciously. All this work is about how to reach real I, about welcoming the master of self, and it is all about what eyes we are willing to leave behind from choice. Trying to make a stronger feeling of the work in ourselves, and all that it is connected with throughout the ages, not simply being creatures of the moment, and living the dream of unreality,